Hi, this is Mark Grossarth from Heritage Family Credit Union. Heritage Family Credit Union is a proud sponsor of Bennington Chamber of Commerce Lunch and Learn series. I hope you find these seminars insightful and educational.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Harrington with the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce. And as we try to do at least once a month is bring you our Lunch and Learn series. This series is about bringing in subject matter experts right from within your region, right from Bennington County or Southwestern Vermont, and to hear from them about things that are happening in the community, or more specifically happening in our business community and our economic communities. And so with us today, we have Wendy Morse from the Vermont Department of Labor, as well as Wendy Callert with Creative Workforce Solutions. And so we've brought them both on today to the show, along with our audience here, to talk to us about this really growing crisis, both during the pandemic, which was about how to keep our workforce safe. And then as we emerge out of the pandemic, how do we get our workforce back to work? And we have heard from probably an employer, at least one employer every single day since we have started to administer vaccines and people have really been starting to open back up, about the lack of workforce and workers available. And so there's some myth to that. There's some reality to that. And so we have both our Wendy's on today to help us figure out both where we're heading and also some tips and tactics about how many of our employers can go about finding new, healthy, great workers. And so I just want to welcome Wendy and Wendy to Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so I want to hop over, and we've got a list of questions, but if you're watching on Facebook, feel free to also type into the comment bar. We'll monitor those comments and ask questions. We have an audience here, and we will also field questions from them if we have time, but we've also started a good question list here. So with that, I want to open it up to Wendy Morse first, and just give us, Wendy, a little bit of your background, kind of where you hail from, how long you've been with the department, and just some of the trends you're seeing over the last really amazing year, to say the least.
So thank you. My background before Department of Labor, I largely came from a business background, working in the private sector in a variety of different types of positions. I am a long-term Bennington resident, born and raised in Bennington, still live in the area. And I've been with the Department of Labor for going on 20 years. So it's been a long time. I've done all of the positions that a field office would do, including answering the phones at our front desk. And I've worked my way right on up to becoming a regional manager. And I now manage three field offices in Bennington, Rutland, and Addison counties. And I've been doing that work since 2013.
Great. Wendy Callert, give us a little bit of background. You're both a small business owner, but also do a lot of work around reintegrating people into the workplace. So talk to us a little bit about your background.
Well, I started my human services career at UCS as a job coach, I think just over 6 years ago. And I realized that helping people was really my passion. And so after about a year of working as a job coach, I was offered a job as an employment consultant for VABR, Vermont Association of Business, Industry, and Rehabilitation. And every year I've taken on more responsibilities there. And I am now the business account manager supervisor. So in this role, I get to serve the business community, individuals looking for employment, and also my fellow business account managers.
Great. Thank you. So Wendy Morris, this may be a little bit of a loaded question, but how has the pandemic changed your role and your job? And I think we're all quite aware of the huge, massive undertaking from the Vermont Department of Labor, all of it, all of you around the state, but specifically to you in this region. How have you seen your role change?
It's, boy, it's really, it's continuing to evolve, I think, as this pandemic has lengthened on, and now we seem to be more on the recovery side of the pandemic and not necessarily on the response side. Very early on, the response side was in assisting individuals with their unemployment claims, and really providing a lot of guidance around that job loss piece, and being out of work. But now it's completely different now that we're working a lot more with the employer side of the house in helping employers recover, and recruit, and fill their vast openings that they have, because I don't think we've talked to any employers right now that do not have openings, and are really desperately trying to fill them. So I think our role just constantly changes. Our challenge has been that we've largely been virtual. It's been both good, but has also posed some challenges, for us as well. We are, I think, going forward, we may be doing some sort of hybrid version of maybe, in-person, being able to offer more in-person services, but also being able to maintain some visibility virtually, because virtually has allowed us the opportunity to connect with different demographics that we may not have been able to connect with when we were just solely providing services out of our field office. So it's definitely, it's constantly evolving. I think a lot of what we're doing right now is in even providing a lot of just sort of HR guidance. A lot of employers are faced with challenges in sort of balancing the needs of their workforce in the issues that are creeping up in the lives of their workforce with their need to maintain their operations, and things like childcare, and how do I manage, or how do I navigate childcare, because I've got a portion of my workforce who's challenged with they've got kids that are home and are homeschooling, and how do you do that? And there's a lot of situations that are coming up as a result of the pandemic that wouldn't normally come up, that are creating some HR questions for employers. And we've certainly been fielding as many of those as possible as well. We don't always know the answers, but we're a resource a lot of the time, so we can do some investigative kind of work. One of our biggest partners is the U.S. Department of Labor, our federal partner, and so we're constantly getting guidance from them as well, and we can make those connections and try to get the right information, directly to the employer. But there's definitely been an uptick in, I think, employers seeking more guidance from Department of Labor, because they want to do it right. People don't want to do things that are going to cause an issue for their workforce, and they want to do what they need to make sure that their business operations sustain, but they also want to do it right for their workforce too, and they don't want to get it wrong. So we've talked to a lot of employers that really are struggling with that balance.
Yeah, and we've seen that over here at the chamber too. Usually we're a conduit over to pass over to you, Wendy, at the department, and you guys have been great partners with us. Talk about a year where it just seemed like something was new every day. There was new news, whether that was travel restrictions, or how many employees you could let back, or how you would even do a remote workplace. Seemed like something was new every single day. So appreciate all your help with that. Wendy Cowart, talk to us a little bit about Creative Workforce Solutions, because that's also an entity, an agency that you do work for. And so talk to us about the program and the mission and the purpose of that institution.
So we refer to it as CWS, and it's an initiative of the Agency of Human Services for about 10 years now. So we serve two different types of customers. We serve the business customer, and we serve the folks looking for employment. And our goal is to bridge those two together and make solid matches. So we try to vet them first, make sure they're going to be a good fit. We have some, progressive employment, which we can't use right now because of the pandemic. We've been doing a lot of informational interviews for folks over Zoom or Teams, but we're not able to place, do work experience placements right now. We're hoping this summer we'll be able to do that. But that's kind of our role, is to take all of the workforce development folks, people working actually that have caseloads of people, even like the Department of Labor is a great partner of ours with CWS. And we all get together every other week and discuss, what the needs are, who's looking for work, and the employers that are looking for staff. So we kind of put it all together in that Creative Workforce Solutions team meeting.
Yeah, pre-COVID, what would be a good example of where you've really connected kind of one to the other? Restaurant help, or where? What's a good example that you've done?
Well, I mean, I can give you an example of, the tavern where we actually had a student go there right out of high school, and she started as a busser, and she just keeps growing in her position. It's that sort of thing. Somebody being given a chance, somebody with a barrier, right, to employment, being given that second chance, or that first chance actually as a student, and then just growing in that position. We've had a lot of successes, even this week. I see a lot of people on the VR caseloads going and getting training, going back to school.
And that's Voc Rehab? That's
Voc Rehab, yeah. I work closely with Voc Rehab. And, we have a lot of folks going back to school or going to a training, going for a degree, looking at opening their own business. There have been some really, a lot of good things happening with all of the funding sources that we have right now for upskilling.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about upskilling in the future. One of the things that just came out, Wendy Morse, today, that I think many employers are looking at, as there has been, in this weird way, as we're trying to help people, there's been this incentive to stay home and be paid by the federal government. And so a lot of our employers, people are making a better living wage by staying home and not working than going to work. And so that's really hit, I think, nationally, but we can speak specifically to Southwestern Vermont. A lot of our specifically our restaurant people and some of our lower wage earners. But just today, the Vermont Department of Labor announced that they will pick back up the work search requirement for unemployment claimants, and that'll be reinstated on May 9th. And so anybody that's registered in regular UI or unemployment insurance, and specific claimants in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance or PUA program. So talk to us a little bit about what that means. How do we get there? Does that impact full-time unemployment as well as part-time unemployment? What does that all look like, and how did the department get to that conclusion?
Yeah, so it has been quite a challenge, and certainly when the pandemic first hit, and all of the executive orders were in place, and it was really limiting movement, and you pretty much had to be an essential worker to leave your house, according to executive order. The need to carry forth a work search requirement to people who are already negatively impacted by COVID didn't make sense. And so a lot of states had put in this waiver request with U.S. Department of Labor to waive their work search requirements. And in many cases, if not all, that was certainly granted. Since then, we've been in this whole phase of really trying to evaluate when timing seemed appropriate to bring that back, to where job opportunities were certainly available. Employers certainly had job openings that they were recruiting for, and the workforce was at a point where they could more safely return back to employment, and maybe had less of an impact, of COVID. And so it's all about making sure that all of those pieces were really equitable and, as equitable and as fair as possible to all sides of that equation, whether it's, the employer side or whether it's the workforce side or the labor force side. And I think it's exciting to know that right now, and again, this is where we're sort of at the recovery point, that now that decision has been made where it does seem like it's a lot more equitable for all sides to be able to come back to that table and begin working again. So employers can recover in the way that they need to recover, for the future, and that the labor force can feel a lot more safe in returning back to their employment situations. And so that is just, we were very excited to see that. I just want to share some numbers because I think what's interesting to know is since this pandemic hit, we're talking about labor force, we're talking about those individuals that are between 16 to 64 and have the ability to work and are either working or have looked for work in the past 4 weeks. And since March of 2020, so we're talking, our latest unemployment report is for March of 2021. In that time frame, Vermont has lost nearly 30,000 in its labor force numbers. So it's a pretty significant number statewide. And I actually pulled the data to see what that, looked like for Bennington and for Manchester. Since we're looking at Bennington County for our labor market areas, and both Bennington and Manchester, what that means is it's about 2,000 people that have actually dropped out of the labor force in that 1 year time period. Doesn't mean that they're not, they don't have the ability to work, but it just means that they've dropped out of the definition for being in the labor force because they've not looked for work in the last 4 weeks, and they've not been required, under the unemployment requirements. What we're hoping is that, as that turns back on, some people still might be exempt from the work search requirement, but I believe probably many will not be, and they'll need to look for work. That actually draws those huge number, 30,000 or roughly 2,000 in Bennington, 2,000 in Manchester, back into the labor force, which should hopefully alleviate some of the frustration that our employer community's been feeling as they've been really actively trying to recruit and draw people in and offer people jobs. So I'm hoping, we're all hoping that definitely helps to alleviate that issue.
Has there been any word, and I don't know the terminology, but the extra money that's coming from the federal government, is that spigot ever, eventually it will have to turn off because we won't have any money left, but I would assume that the Biden administration and then, the rest of the states would eventually wean us off of, or at least the unemployed people off of that, what is it, $300 or $400 that they're getting? Is there anything on the horizon that is going to move? Because I think, yes, in one way, it's about just holding the carrot and stick, right? Making sure people are applying for jobs. But I would assume that many of our employers are also saying, they do the bare minimum, some of them to look like they're looking for work. But the other stick there might be that $300 or $400 that goes missing, and then you kind of have to go back to work. Anything on the horizon that's going to change anytime soon?
Yeah, so I'm almost certain. It's been a while since I've read the latest that came out, but I believe that is set to sunset or expire the end of September.
Okay.
So eventually that $300 is going to go away. People are going to return back to their regular unemployment benefit if the unemployment benefit even carries them through that far.
Sure.
The unemployment system is complicated to begin with, but it became 10 times more complicated once all of these stimulus packages and the new programming came out through, and the various ways that people could demonstrate eligibility. I mean, it is massively complicated now with PUA, and even with PUA, there's some demographic, which are self-contractors and independent contractors and self-employed folks that are gaining access to PUA, which now, before they would never have had the opportunity to get a benefit like that. And then within PUA, there are individuals that qualify for PUA because they didn't qualify for regular unemployment benefits. So, I mean, all of this stuff, it's a huge opportunity it's been a huge opportunity for people to try to, sustain themselves financially during a really difficult time. But at the same token, like, these things none of these were designed to be permanent. Like, people definitely at some point have to get back to work and start to figure out ways to, reinstitute their own self-regulation for their finances.
Sure. Yeah, Wendy Cowart, when you hear all those things and some of the movement going forward with the Department of Labor, what are other opportunities? What are other programs, or just as you're coaching your employers to look under every rock, what are some of the rocks you're picking up and showing? If we have some employers listening in today, what would be some things you would say, hey, this might help?
Well, we work with people with barriers to employment, right? Because if you wanted a job right now and you were trained in that field, you wouldn't be looking for a job, you would be hired. So I think it's really important to, to give people a second chance sometimes. When I say barrier to employment, it can be anything from a physical disability to a background from a long time ago. It could be a substance abuse problem, and it could be that they don't have transportation to get there, and you might have to flex your schedule a little bit, let them come in when the bus can get them there, right, and let them get out when the last bus goes by. We've had some businesses do this in Manchester for Bennington residents. So, there's a little bit of flexibility, giving people a second chance, not necessarily writing them off if if they don't have exactly the training that you're looking for. There's different programs out there to help you get them trained. This is the stuff I love. I mean, we have so many great success stories of people being given that second chance, and given the opportunity to show them what they can do. So I just say, give me a call, send me an email. Let's talk about this. How can I help? I would love to help.
Yeah. If you're tuning in on Facebook and you have a question for Wendy Morse with the Department of Labor, or Wendy Cowart with Creative Workforce Solutions and Weber, please just type them into the comment bar and we will try and get to them. And those who are tuning in, our members, our audience on Zoom, if you have questions, start to get ready. We have a couple more that we'll ask, but I want to make sure that we give plenty of time for people to ask their own questions. Wendy Cowart, but there's a question for you, but I also want to make sure Wendy Morse has time to answer too. You had talked about kind of leveling up skills. And so having worked with both of you for years now, I know that is just something you guys champion so much, about how to take someone and give them the additional skill set they need to have a better job and a better life. Talk to us, Wendy Cowart, first, a little bit of what you're doing today to help people do that, and then we'll go over to Wendy Morse.
Actually, Wendy Morse and I both are on a subcommittee. It's called Training and Education Subcommittee. We are working with educators and other folks in our field. We get together every other Friday, and we brainstorm, what are employers looking for? Like, that's like the big question, right? What do you need to have to go to work for these employers? And then we also have, the ear of the folks who are looking for work to try to find out, okay, what do you need to be able to take this training, to get these skills so that you can go to work for these industries. So yeah, we're working really hard on this right now. It's been, it took a while to get off the ground. I have to say, Wendy and I have been meeting for over a year, but it's coming together, and we are putting trainings together. And then, of course, there's, the funding is available right now. So really exciting. It's good stuff.
What are you finding to be some of the top skills that people either need or they want? So on one side, people want to get more educated in what areas, or what are you finding from employers are some of the most top needs to level up?
A lot of it, customer service was one of the big ones that we actually had at Southwest Tech. We had a customer service training. And of course, we are working with CCV on a hospital, sort of like an intro to healthcare class.
Yep.
So those are the two things that we worked on first.
Great. Wendy, Morse, what about you? Obviously, you're working closely with Wendy Cowler, but other areas that the Department of Labor has programs or opportunities to help people level up?
Yeah, so we actually have a lot of opportunities to help people level up or train up. We work with a federally funded program called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And we call it WIOA for short, but there's definitely money in it, and it's money that actually goes directly to employment plans for individuals that help them meet their career goals. There's actually 3 different very distinct demographics that this training program or training grant will serve. It serves youth ages 16 to 24. And it could really help somebody who maybe is just transitioning out of high school, maybe is low income, or maybe, has some sort of barrier that they just not really sure what to do post high school. And we can help them sort of career plan and map that out and figure that out. And we work with Voc Rehab and Weber as well. We work very closely with Voc Rehab and Weber, particularly around youth that may have a disability, to help them successfully transition into the labor force. We also work with adults, and these would be individuals that are 18 and above, who may have some barriers to employment, but are largely just low income. Right now, if you're somebody who maybe you've been out of work for a while, but didn't qualify for unemployment benefits, you're low income because of the way that we calculate it. So it doesn't mean that you're necessarily no skilled or low skilled, but it may be somebody that may need a little bit of help to help them transition successfully to some sort of, next job or upskill and training, or take a class at CCV or Southwest Tech or whatever that may be. And then we also work with dislocated workers. And so these would be individuals that have lost their job to no fault of their own. Maybe their place of business closed. Maybe there was a big reduction in force, even when COVID hit, and now, they've lost that job permanently. They would be a dislocated worker. And so those are individuals that we can also help. The WIOA program can fund training, so it can fund the cost of tuition to attend training, whether it's pre-vocational training, maybe it's they want to take courses at CCV, or maybe it's occupational skills training that is needed, so it can fund that. The bigger part of OJT that actually is kind of underutilized on the employer side, and we would love for employers, especially now, that you guys are really just completely interested in using all sorts of different tips and techniques to try to draw people in, is something called the OJT, or an on-the-job training experience. And this is where if they were interested, potentially in a candidate, but that candidate didn't have all of the skills that they would need for them to start, what the Department of Labor could do through the WIOA program is actually help offset the costs associated with training that person. So, for example, if somebody wanted to pay a worker $20 an hour, as a starting salary, Department of Labor could reimburse the employer a percentage of those wages while they're in that negotiated training contract.
Interesting. So employers, tune in, hear what the Wendy's are saying to you. There's money out there. And in the spirit of it, right? I mean, the spirit is to train up and level up our workers. I've got other questions, but I want to open it up to people. But one last one that I just want to make sure I get in there with both Wendy's. We're all coming out of the COVID pandemic. The world has changed, the new normal. We probably won't ever go back to a certain way of life. Where do you both see that the workplace is going to change in the next 3 to 5 years? How will that change? How will specifically the Vermont workplace or Southwestern Vermont workplace change? Or have you already started to see those things? So I'll go to Wendy Callert first. We'll go to Wendy Morse after.
No, I was hoping you were going to go to Wendy Morse first.
I could just say Wendy, and then you.
Wendy, help me out here, Wendy.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take that one, Wendy?
Go for it.
Okay. We're actually already seeing some changes in the workforce. I think what's happening right now is it's actually a job seeker market. So employers, again, because of the need to connect to labor force, employers are having to be a lot more crafty and creative with incentives to draw people into, their positions. So we're seeing that happen. Sometimes it's, higher starting wages. Sometimes they're, different bonuses or different benefits that are now available that maybe weren't available before the pandemic. And I think employers are also offering, we see a lot more employers offering remote opportunities, telework kind of opportunities. And I'm anticipating that some of that's actually going to stay. I can see that happening quite a bit, as employers have found there are a lot of benefits to being able to offer some of those positions, not only from a retention standpoint with their workforce, but also from a cost standpoint. There are definitely some efficiencies that can be found or realized by providing those remote work opportunities. I attended a conference back in, I think it was August. It was the National Association for State Workforce Agencies. We call it NASWA for short. And there was a presenter on there whose business was, before the pandemic, was sort of helping employers transition to remote work and getting all of the HR and systems and stuff up in place. And, at that point, I think there was something like only 10 or 15% of the nation's workforce was considered remote and actually classified remote. When the pandemic hit, that number swelled to like almost 70% that went that way. And what they're anticipating is that number will probably settle out somewhere around the 30%, somewhere between 30 to 40% range nationwide. And I think that is definitely something that we could see here. I'm excited about that possibility from a workforce standpoint, because one of the things that I think has sometimes a deterrent for the job seekers we work with is that they have a special skill or job in mind that may not be like here. And so being able to, connect to more remote work opportunities actually retains workforce here, which is great. We want to retain workforce here, but it also can really help diversify the opportunities that do exist for the labor force we have. And from a workforce standpoint, it's almost like you've got to have labor force to replicate itself. So if you've got a core of people that are working and productive and just love it here, like that spreads, right? That kind of spreads like a virus, and so more people would be attracted, to this area. And I think it actually benefits a lot more of the employers in Vermont as well. And it certainly benefits the businesses, the stores and all of those other economic drivers that we have. So, certainly the real estate, I saw the article in Digger recently about the real estate and how real estate has been booming in Vermont. And part of that is people felt like Vermont was safe, and it is a safe place to go. But I'm hoping that we're able to keep them here, beyond the pandemic.
Yeah, I think the Vermont Chamber has come out and claimed that Vermont wants to be the workforce capital or work from home capital of the world, or at least the United States. So we agree. And even if it's interesting because you work in macro numbers, and then I know all the Wendy's on this call and myself included work in these little micro numbers too. So I think to your point, Wendy Morse, if you even lost a job or needed to transfer and all of a sudden you gained those skills from New York City, but you lived in Vermont, but those skills transferred over to the health center here, or they transferred over to one of the larger corporations here, and you still could live in Vermont. So I think that's also what you're talking about, that kind of trickle down. And obviously those people also spend good money, buy good houses, and that sort of thing when they are living here.
Or they bring their families here.
Or they bring their family.
They've got their, now they've got their children that are adults, and they want to stay here, and so they figure out ways to, carve their place in the labor force as well. So it's really exciting.
Erica on my team is speaking in my ear and reminding me that the chamber also offers dental and vision insurances too at a discount. So part of the benefits, as we look at a benefits package, we always encourage our members to take advantage of those and to offer those to your employees. Imagining having your dental covered or your vision covered. So just one of the other little benefits of the chamber, as being a member in the chamber, you can start to build up those benefit packages. With that, and with the next 20 minutes or less, I do want to open it up to some of the people on the call. And again, if you're watching on Facebook, please type a comment or question for either Wendy Morse or Wendy Cowler into the comment bar. But any questions from the people that have tuned in? We have a great group of about 13 to 14 participants joining us in the audience, and didn't know if anybody had any questions for either of the Wendys.
I guess I'll start. It's more of a comment / question. So my name is Shannon. I work for the Bank of Bennington, and I'm also on the board for the chamber. But as we talk about businesses struggling to attract applicants and employees, I'm hearing across the board that even organizations that have great benefit packages or offer sign-on bonuses aren't able to get people to even apply. Pre-COVID, if you posted a position, you may normally, get 5 or 10 applicants, and now you're lucky if you get one. So is there still enough people in the labor force? We've lost, 2,000 in Bennington and in Manchester, but are there still folks in the market that are looking, and is that ever going to get any better? I mean, if like Mac, who's offering a $2,000 bonus, or Orvis is offering sign-on bonuses, and the bank's offering matching 401k and pension and education, blah, like all these great benefits. If we can't attract employees, how does somebody like the Dutchman, who may not offer all those benefits, be able to attract that $15 to $18 an hour employees? So how do we get over that hurdle of getting people to even apply, finding that population?
I'd be happy to take that one. So, there's a couple of great resources. One, of course, is the Department of Labor. We are more than happy to do a couple of things. One is we can post any openings. So if you had openings, we're more than happy to post them in our Vermont Job Link system for you. And Vermont Job Link, I don't know if you've ever used it, but from an employer standpoint, it's a little clunky and a little confusing to use. So we just say, we say to employers, just give it to us. We know our system best. We'll make it easy on you, and we'll put it in the system. So that is definitely one way, is to just provide us opportunities to your job postings, and we're happy to post them. And of course, that's a completely free service. The other thing I will say is, with the unemployment population that's out there, part of turning on that work search requirement also requires that if you're receiving unemployment benefits, that you are required to register with the Vermont Job Link, which is our system. So they will have access to those openings as well. So if we're looking at that 30,000 gap, I mean, there's still 30,000 that could be potentially receiving unemployment, and actually are receiving unemployment benefits. They're now required, if they don't have an active Vermont Job Link registration, they're required to have one once May 9th hits. And so that there's some accountability for that. And then the other thing is, Vermont Department of Labor every Thursday, and this started way back in July, August of last year, we started virtual hiring events on Thursday, and there's a statewide hiring event that happens every Thursday at 11 o'clock, again, completely free for employers to participate in. The first 15 to 20 minutes will showcase employers that have a statewide hiring need. We've had, for example, Vermont Agency of Transportation was one of those employers. Because they had openings all over the state, they got to be showcased in the first 15 to 20 minutes. And then from there, job seekers have the ability to branch off into more regionalized hiring events. And so for us, Bennington, Rutland, and Addison County is considered the Southwest region. And that is where we will showcase employers that have openings that are more localized. So it may be an employer that only has a need in Bennington. For example, I know Bank of Bennington is Bennington and Rutland. So, if you've got openings in both, that would be a great thing for Bank of Bennington to do. But we also will showcase employers that may have hiring needs in all three counties as well. We do a significant amount of outreach weekly to a huge database now of applicants that we've made connections to that have actually said, oh yes, we want information on your hiring events. And so we will send them information every week. There's both a statewide focus, but there's also that localized focus that the Southwest region does too. And I can't say we get hundreds of job seekers that attend. I'm actually anticipating that number could go up now that the job search is going to get turned on. I do think that number will go up, but we've had one of the healthier attendance rates, I think, of many of the other parts of Vermont, and it is because of I'm confident it's because of the outreach efforts that we do weekly.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Hi, Shannon. It's good to see you. I wanted to say, what else I could think of when you were talking about that was, what if we brought some folks who are interested in banking to do some sort of, I realize we can't do this right now, but like a job shadow where you can show them kind of what it looks like to do that job, because I think people are nervous to touch other people's money, right? And like, it makes them nervous, but I know that we have some folks on caseloads that are really good at math, and we think about banking, but maybe you and I can talk offline, and we can set up some informational interviews and just get the conversation going, and maybe do like a small training or something about money.
Great, love to. I'll connect with you after. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon.
Right. See what a good question gets you? It gets you all types of information and friendship and partnership. So we still have a good audience here. Any other questions for Wendy or Wendy? Or have they answered everything you've ever wanted to know about workforce?
Hi, it's Denise Monty from the Village Peddler and East Arlington and Village Chocolate Shop in Bennington. I know my name pops up there twice because my mom is listening in as well. And I heard you talk about that help offsetting the cost of training, but are there other programs that are more long-term helping offset costs, right? Because we're in a situation where it's going to, we're not paying a huge amount of money. We don't need a huge amount of employees, but trying to get someone that, even if we could hire them, to be able to get them to stay because we're not offering as much as Walmart is. Are there other programs or resources that could help offset that so that we could offer them a little bit higher wage or different benefits or something like that?
So that's a great question, and it kind of goes back to even before the pandemic. We always have employers that are always in that boat, of the retention, and to some degree, like those employers will classify themselves as being like a revolving door. Like people kind of go in, and then something better comes along, and then their workforce leaves or that worker leaves and goes to a different job. I think, with that, there may be ways for you to collaborate with other employers and almost use, if you know that that's gonna happen, and they're like, you can't operate beyond what you're able to do as an employer. But if you know that that's gonna happen, instead of thinking about that as being like a negative, use that to your strength, and you use that to your ability, and use that your place of business. If you could create strategic alliances with maybe other employers, maybe you could act as somewhat of a training ground or a feeder ground to other businesses. And instead of people being afraid to apply because maybe you can't offer as much as others, maybe then that changes that conversation. So people would be very interested in applying to you if they knew that this was one way they could do like other things and get to other places. I think about this often with particularly seasonal employers, because a lot of people are afraid to apply to seasonal type positions just for that reason. And seasonal employers could create those strategic alliances with other employers that are opposite that season, so that everybody's sort of like sharing and working with the interests of the labor force instead of trying to work against it. Then maybe that results in something different. But as far as any other special like programming from Department of Labor, we don't have anything that would provide, more funding to help out with that. But I guess more just sort of brainstorming around strategies on how to help employers overcome that concern or issue.
And Denise, I just want to add, I think Department of Labor is also doing a summer youth program this year. So we're both kind of doing different age groups, but we are paying for the summer youth career exploration program. VR is actually paying the wage to the youth, paying the workman's comp insurance. Like there's no risk to the employer, and I would love to send you some information on what it looks like, what the program looks like, and maybe I can get your email address or everyone's email address, or send it to Matt.
Yeah, we can connect you guys.
Yeah, that would be great. There's some really good things happening. So.
And one thing the chamber will do, we've started Deeper Connections, a different platform where we do a little bit more workshop style, whereas the Coffee and Conversations is more conversational around a topic, and Lunch and Learns are more of a learning platform. We've launched Deeper Connections, which is more of a, okay, let's take that problem and let's work together to find a solution. It'd be interesting to look at an employee share program or something what Wendy's talking about, and just really even tackling this this challenge we all have by getting us all, we end up doing Zoom breakout rooms, and we pair you off with people, and we just did it with doing cross-promotional either marketing or events. And we have 3 or 4 groups that are working, businesses, and Denise, you're well aware of this because I know you're partnering with one of those groups to provide a chocolate weekend. So maybe we can take some of the synergy that we found last week in that group and do another Deeper Connections. Again, just really trying to thread the needle and bring it a little further along instead of just doing a Lunch and Learn. So if you're interested in that, let Erica or me know, and we'd love to have Wendy back to just even help this. I think it would be a fun, interesting workshop to pull together. So other questions in the last couple minutes, I want to make sure that we don't skip over any of our audience. If you do have questions for either Wendy. And again, we will provide contact information for Wendy Morris and Wendy Callert. I know Wendy Callert put her email in the show notes. So they're very approachable people. Okay.
I just want to say it's great fun when Wendy and I have gone to Tasty Freeze and we order stuff because they write your first name like on your slip or whatever, and we'll go up to the counter and we'll order our thing. What's your name, Wendy? And then I go up and what's your name, Wendy? And they're like, what? We did that once with 3 Wendy's. We had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. The little perks and funds that you find in Southern Vermont, right? Putting all the Wendy's together and try
right.
Starbucks, right? When you go there. See how many different ways you can spell Wendy. Okay, with that, I want to thank everybody for taking some time out of their day, out of their lunch time, potentially, and hopping on this call. We know that this is really one of the #1 challenges we're facing coming out of the pandemic from our employers. And so I know we will continue to partner with the Department of Labor and Creative Workforce Solutions, Wendy, along with the other leaders we have in our community to help find a solution. So with that, I want to thank everybody for hopping on this call. I do want to make a note. We do have a Lunch and Learn coming up May 12th, and that is duct tape shoestring marketing. So we'll do a complete 180 and then move away from the labor force and start to talk about how, as we turn on the tourism season and the travel season, you might be able to do some inexpensive duct tape shoestring marketing. So join us for May 12th. That'll be at noon again, same platform as we are on today. And we also have our Coffee and Conversations coming up May 28th, and that's building events to boost your business. I know Denise over at the chocolate shop and some others have really done a terrific job making it an experience to walk into their shop, whether it's building a candy bar or doing the world's largest Reese's Pieces. So we want to spread some of that knowledge with all of you. So join us for a Coffee and Conversations. That's early morning, 8 a.m. On May 28th. So with that, I want to thank Cat TV and Mike Cutler for producing this Lunch and Learn, as you guys always have. Great partners there. And thank you all those tuning in on Facebook, and we'll be back on the 12th. Okay, have a good one, everybody.